Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Changing the Future. Redone. By the Patient One. 1 year after fulfilling their dreams, the Straw Hat Pirates are given the chance to save something they lost by being sent back in time. Who are they going to save? How will the past Straw Hats react to the future ones? And how insanely will the past be changed? Adios.
So, it's my turn at last. The cold determination in Robin's voice rang out before the light had even finished fading. Looking around, the 10 members of the Straw Hat Pirates beheld a small clearing surrounded by trees. It was of a mild and pleasant climate, the peacefulness spoiled only by the panic that their advanced senses picked up a short distance away, and the sight of 10 marine battleships off of the coast. So, this is Ohara? Not a very big island, Luffy said, earning a whack from Nami. Be a little more sensitive, Luffy, she scolded. So, dear Robin, what's your plan? Sanji asked quietly. The archaeologist turned back to them, and though their hoods remained up as they had been in the previous jump, they could feel her cold determination. My first thought was simply to save the island and then contact Dragon, but this is 20 years in the past. He will not have the resources to help for at least another decade. I'm quite relieved that I've had this long to consider it. We will need all the time we have to ensure the island's safety. So, should we just take out those battleships now? Frankie asked. Let me see precisely when we are first, Robin replied. She crossed her arms and after several seconds spoke clearly and sharply. The Buster Call has already been invoked, there's no time to lose. Nami, head to the Tree of Knowledge, the giant tree in the middle of the island. Put out the fires, but do not be seen until you're finished. On it, Nami said before shaving away. Luffy, knock out all the marines you can with your haki. Jinbei, create currents to ensure that the ships don't have a clear line of fire. Brook, disarm the cannons, and use as little ice as possible. Be as subtle as you can be. Don't fight unless you must. Don't let the other ships realize anything is amiss until it's too late, and don't attack Sakazuki's ship yet. What? Why are we sparing him? Luffy growled. We're not. We're waiting for him to try to make his move on absolute justice, and attempt to blow up the evacuation ship. When he does that, Luffy, intercept the cannonball for all to see, then kill him. Afterwards, order the civilians to drop the anchor of the ship, and wait for me on board. Brook, Jinbei, once the battleships are left powerless, rejoin Nami. The three nodded and vanished. Zoro, find Kuzan, and bring him to the Tree of Knowledge to ensure he witnesses everything. Sanji, a giant named Saul, an old friend of mine, is on this island. Do the same for him. That should be fun, Zoro remarked. Both he and Sanji expanded their senses for a few moments before shaving away in different directions. Usopp, Frankie, follow after Nami. As soon as the fire is out, we're going to perform a modified Zunisha conversion. Zunisha conversion? Frankie barked in disbelief. Even for just the basics, a whole day wouldn't be enough time. Let alone an hour. This better be some serious modification you have in mind, Robin. The reply she gave made the eyes of all who heard widen, followed by identical grins, all still hidden beneath the hoods. How did we never think of doing that? Frankie laughed. Robin, you. As much as I appreciate the compliments, time is not on our side, Robin cut in. Right. We're gone, Usopp said hastily before vanishing, Frankie following him. Chopper, you're with me. Professor Clover is injured, as is my mother. As soon as they're treated, you'll help the others with the conversion. And with that, the final two disappeared. Hurry up, protect the books. Every scholar in the grandest library the world had ever seen had the same dark thoughts in their minds towards the world government, the ones who had set their treasure on fire. Hands moved at breakneck speeds to rescue the books from the shelves. Water buckets being passed around as fast as they could manage, all while the fire slowly consumed the Tree of Knowledge at speeds far faster than the dozens of scholars could keep up with. Don't let a single, one scholar cut off, as he abruptly became very wet. He glanced behind him in irritation. Watch where you're throwing that water? He trailed off as he took in the fact that it was not someone being careless with a water bucket that got him wet. Everyone else in the library had likewise slowed to a stop as they observed the bizarre phenomenon. Clouds had formed in the top of the tree, and rain was falling down in a cascade. The fire that threatened their precious books was out in less than a minute, and the rain ceased at the same time. "That should work," came a female voice. All present snapped their attention to a high balcony in the tree, where an enigmatic figure stood. That she was female they knew only because of the voice. Her entire body was covered in black garments, with a strange staff as her only discernible feature. As quickly as she appeared, she vanished, only to reappear by their sides a second later. Anyone who still had water buckets dropped them. Short explanation. I can control the weather, and I'm here to help. You'll get the long explanation once the rest of my crew has destroyed the Buster Call, she said to the dumbstruck scholars. With the threat of their books burning up remarkably gone, they couldn't bring themselves to do more than gape. Nami, until a borderline frantic call came from near the doorway, and two more equally enigmatic figures, one shaped normally and one decidedly not, came up to her. "What is it, guys?" the woman asked. "We need your help, now. Robin's plan is to—" The speaker cut himself off with a glance at the scholars, then moved closer and began to whisper. 7 seconds later, the first figure, Nami, apparently, turned back towards the scholars. "Get me the most detailed map of this island that you have, now," she screamed. The scholars found themselves complying before they knew what they were doing. Nami, meanwhile, grumbled to the other two figures. "Damn it, Robin, is it doable? Yes. Is it brilliant? Absolutely. Is it exasperating that she couldn't have told me this any sooner so I could have planned for it more? Hell yes?" The other two flinched away from her. Fortunately for them, one of the scholars returned at that moment, laying out a large and detailed map of the island. The other scholars looked with interest as Nami removed her hood, showing a young woman with long orange hair. She scanned over the map for a moment before snatching a nearby pen and beginning to mark over the map. "Hey, what do you think you're—" The unfortunate speaker quickly shut up in response to the glare that Nami sent their way. She sighed as she went back to poring over the map. "Sorry, but I have a lot to do and only a little time to do it. It'd be one thing if we were just saving you all from the Buster Call, but Robin's determined to save the whole island, especially this library. And we don't have enough time or resources to build or obtain a reliable ship and unload all of these books onto it. So, that only leaves one option." "And, that would be?" another scholar asked. Nami set the pen down hard as she presented the map to the other two. "Usopp, Frankie, get digging." The two nodded, and vanished the next instant. Nami shook her head as she glanced back at the scholars, finally answering the question. "That would be moving the entire island so that the world government can't find it." Most of the scholars were distinctly confused, but one of them managed to speak up again. "You keep mentioning the name Robin. You can't mean Nico Robin?" Nami smiled again. "Like I said, we'll explain everything once the Buster Call is dealt with. Now, I suggest all of you start securing this tree, and hurry up. Otherwise, you're going to have to do a lot of picking up once we've moved the island. It's not going to be a smooth transition." Nami vanished again before the scholars could question her further. Nobody moved for a few moments. "I think we should do what she said," one of the scholars said, looking around for things they could use to secure the library, and its coon followed. "Oh, what am I supposed to do now?" groaned an orange-haired giant, observing the battleships from the coast. Sweat pouring down his face as he sensed the killing intent of all those aboard. He felt their franticness. The Buster Call had been invoked. What was he going to do? "Robin," he breathed. He shook his head and turned to head deeper into the island, starting to run. "I've got to make sure she gets clear of this mess. Those cannonballs are gonna hit everywhere." "Saul, I take it?" Saul screeched to a stop as he turned towards the source of the voice. A man stood there, clothed in black from head to finger to foot, not a single part of him identifiable. "Robin sent me to get you. She wants you to witness when the world government learns exactly how dangerous a woman scorned can be," he said calmly. "Who are you?" "My name is Sanji," he replied, removing his hood to reveal a blonde-haired man with a very curly eyebrow covering his one visible eye. "I'm the chef of a crew known as the Straw Hat Pirates, and we're here to save Ohara from destruction. Robin met us 3 years ago, and talked us into making her an honorary crewmate. She asked that I bring you to the Tree of Knowledge so you can witness all of this." "Why would a group of pirates know Robin?" She's just an 8-year-old girl, Saul said incredulously. Despite that, however, he could tell with his haki that the man was sincere. An 8-year-old girl with a devil fruit and a doctorate degree in archaeology. Is knowingness really that far-fetched? Sanji asked dryly. Fair point, I guess. All right, lead the way. But I'm watching you, the giant rumbled darkly. Sanji chuckled as he replaced his hood and shaved away. Smart Alec, does he expect a giant to be able to shave? Saul growled before beginning to run again. Vice Admiral Kuzan stared with cold impassiveness at the island as he moved to the bow of the ship. He silently regretted the transgressions of his friend Saul for choosing to ally with the scholar, contrary to his orders. Olvia must have swayed him. No matter. He hoped, however, that he'd never cross paths with Saul again, forcing him to exercise his authority as a marine and arrest or execute him. He shook his head to clear it as he prepared to give the order to fire the cannons. But as the words came to the tip of his tongue, a chill severely different from that which his powers made him use made him stop. Making the connection immediately, he turned around and was greeted with the sight of every marine on deck falling unconscious. Eyes narrowing, part of his form turned to ice as his senses locked on to the one responsible, who appeared on the deck a moment later. The individual was clothed purely in black, not a speck of flesh visible beneath his garments. He did not move from where he stood. My, you're quite bold, attacking a ship with a vice admiral on board. But that haki of yours gives me the feeling that you know a thing or two. Who are you? He asked coldly. The Pirate King, he replied without hesitation. Kuzan blinked before shaking his head. I was asking a serious question. That was as far as he got before the figure positively flew forward, the Iceman's haki barely responding in time for him to notice the attack before it hit him. His reflexes proved to be too slow even with that advantage, however. One solid punch made him cough up blood and sent him flying clear off of the ship. The next thing he knew, he was crashing against a sandy beach. His mind processed with ease that he was on the island of Ohara now, and he grimaced as he prepared to freeze away back to his ship. Then his haki alerted him to another presence, and he turned around. Looks like my captain got a little exuberant, said the figure nonchalantly, clothed identically to the man who had sent him flying. Ah, well, I can't moonwalk, so it's for the better that he sent you over here. I need you to come with me. Or what? Kuzan said, his tone on par with dry ice as he began to transform. Or else you'll never know who we are. The unexpected response gave Kuzan pause. What do you want? He asked, his voice still cold. It's not what we want that matters here. It's what our crewmate wants. And what she wants is for you to be there while she saves this island. She wants you to hear the whole explanation that we're going to give the scholars. We can fight if you want, but it would just make more work for our doctor. Kuzan's eyebrows rose. He had no doubts that the man was as strong as he implied after what he saw from his captain. That wasn't the surprising part of what he said. You would give medical treatment to an enemy? The figure shrugged. You follow moral justice. That's good enough for us. Kuzan considered that. Then, slowly, the ice around his body began to recede. Fine. I'll play along for now. Good. Now, please tell me that you can shave. I don't want to have to carry you the whole way. The 8-year-old Nico Robin had tears cascading down her face as she stared at the retreating agents and the white-haired woman that she was sure was her mother. On top of Professor Clover being shot, Saul's warning that the island was going to be destroyed, and the tree of knowledge beginning to burn, the woman denying that she was her long-lost mother was too much. Far above too much, in fact. Her world was crumbling apart around her, and as a memory of a happy family came into her mind, her heart broke, and she could handle no more. It's me, it's Robin, she yelled pleadingly. I've grown since the last time, so maybe you don't recognize me. I've been waiting for you all these years. The woman stopped walking. Are you sure? You're really not my mom? The woman collapsed to her knees, apparently sobbing. Just once, someday, I wanted to hold your hand, and walk together like a family, Robin sobbed. I studied hard. To become an archaeologist. So I could go to sea with you. I can read the poneglyphs, too. Explosions echoed from far off, and the lead agent and Clover reacted incredulously to her words. Robin barely noticed, her eyes only on the white-haired woman, who was now clearly crying. So, please look at me. Let me stay with you, Mom. Robin, the woman said quietly, but to Robin, it was as clear as day. I've waited so long, we're finally together, don't leave me alone again. She won't. Robin jumped, and then looked beside her, where a figure clad in pure black stood. Her voice sounded exactly like her mother's. WHO are you? Get away from Robbie, came the voice of O'Hara's chief scholar. Calm down, Professor Clover, and try to hold still. Our doctor is here to treat you, the woman said calmly. Slowly, almost grudgingly, Robin turned her eyes away from her mother and looked back at Professor Clover. He was lying on his back again, his upper garments had been removed, and he was being bandaged up by a smaller figure, also clad in black. Who are you? Robin hiccuped. We'll tell you that later. For now, just know that we're here to save you. The smaller figure squeaked even as he began treating Professor Clover where he had been shot. Save them? Huh? All eyes turned back towards the leader of the agents on the island, who stared at the figure smugly. I don't know who you are, but if you really think that you can survive a buster call, you're just a bunch of fools. O'Hara dies today, in the name of justice. Really? I heard the cannon fire, but where are the explosions? They're not on the island, and the remaining possibilities all boil down to the same explanation, the woman stated, a cool smugness in her voice that rivaled Spandine's. Said agent's smile dropped as he realized the implication. You bastards have seriously bit off more than you can chew. All eyes turned towards the source of the new voice from the direction of the forest. Another black figure stood there, and was ignored in favor of the giant with a cowboy hat, orange beard, a tattered black shirt, and tattered khaki shorts, who looked mooring. 5 vice admirals and 10 battleships? You'd need a hell of a lot more than that to take out the Pirate King's crew. All eyes turned towards another new voice from the direction of the Tree of Knowledge. 2 more people stood there, another black figure, and a man with black hair, sunglasses, an outfit similar to the giant's minus the hat, and a marine trench coat. His face was set in a scowl, and unlike everyone else, he didn't seem shocked at the last words the figure said. We will not allow you to harm O'Hara, stated the woman beside Robin, crossing her arms over her chest in an X. Spandine and the 2 agents beside him turned to her with identical scowls, despite the cold sweat on their faces, but before they could do any more than that. Sazenta Fleur. Robin's eyes widened and her jaw dropped in shock as she saw arms sprout all over their bodies, holding them in place. To say she was dumbstruck would be appropriate. That was her devil fruit power, and she wasn't doing that. Cover your eyes, Robin. I don't want you to have to see this, said the woman. Robin hesitated, but complied, scrunching her eyes shut. Clutch. The next moment, she heard the unmistakable sound of bones cracking, and she winced as she realized for the first time exactly how dangerous her powers could be. And if the fact that she heard some of the scholars behind her throwing up was any indication, she was sure that she never wanted to be that brutal. Saul, get them out of sight, Robin heard the woman yell. Then she spoke in a more normal tone. Chopper, how is Professor Clover? The bullet didn't hit any vital organs. He'll make a full recovery, but he'll need to take it easy for a few days, the doctor replied back. Good. Robin, you can open your eyes now. The girl slowly opened one eye and was greeted with the smiling, tearful face of her mother, kneeling directly in front of her. Both her eyes snapped open, and she smiled as she took her mother's hand into hers. I've been waiting a long time to do this, she said. Then, all at once, her emotions got the better of her, and more tears, this time of joy, streamed down her face. I'm glad, she managed. Robin, the woman said joyfully, pulling the girl into a hug. Mommy, she cried, embracing her mother tightly. They held their embrace for almost a minute before. Sanji, get over here and help me, Robin, you owe me for this, big time. The girl promptly snapped her head up, staring in the direction of the Tree of Knowledge. A woman with long orange hair stood there, the source of the scream, and she seemed to be staring at the woman in black. Robin's eyes widened as her mind connected the dots. Excuse me? She said, looking up at the woman beside her. You sound a lot like my mother, and those were my devil fruit powers, and your name is Robin, too. The figure slowly nodded. Robin's hand never left her mother's, but she was at her full height as she spoke again. I don't mean to sound crazy, but are you, me? Robin asked hesitantly. The figure slowly raised her hands and removed her hood. The head revealed underneath was the spitting image of her mother, save for the injuries and the fact that her hair was black rather than white. "Yes, I am," she replied, giving her younger self a small smile. Nico Robin, age 31, sent back in time to save Ohara from the destruction and genocide it suffered. The scholars, Saul, and even Kuzan gaped at the older Robin, but Olvia slowly let her daughter go as she straightened, looking the black-haired woman in the eye. They stared at each other for several seconds without speaking. Then they moved in unison, embracing each other tightly and tearfully. Nobody, not even the younger Robin, moved to break them apart, and for the next few minutes, they merely held each other, no words spoken aloud. At last, Olvia broke the silence. "Robin, what in the world happened?" she asked softly. The black-haired woman slowly pulled away, her head bowed as she replied. "Saul washed up on this island 4 days before you arrived. I was the one who found him, and we became friends. He came here in the midst of the attack, and you forced him to take me away, so that I would survive, while you did what you could to protect the books and the Tree of Knowledge." There was no accusation in her voice, she was merely stating facts. When we reached the coast, the battleships fired on Saul. He began attacking them and urged me to run to the evacuation ship. I did so, and was denied entry even before they learned that I was a scholar due to my powers and being the daughter of a supposed criminal. It was at that time that Vice Admiral Kuzan, she gestured at the Marine in the trench coat, came to attack Saul and me, up until Vice Admiral Sakazuki fired on the evacuation ship, destroying it and killing everyone on board due to the remote risk of a single scholar having snuck on. Saul attempted to run, but Kuzan caught up with him and killed him. I ran away and reached the edge of the island, where Kuzan was waiting for me. Disturbed by Sakazuki's actions and as a last act of loyalty to Saul, he spared my life and gave me a rowboat with which to leave. Despite this, however, my picture wound up in the hands of the Marines, who put a bounty on my head of 79 million berries, ostensibly for destroying 6 of their battleships. I was alone for the next 20 years, during which I did whatever I had to in order to survive, carrying on the name of Ohara as the sole survivor of the Buster Call. I could never rely on anyone for protection, anyone I turned to always wanting to make easy money or believing the world government's lies about me being the child of a demon, and I eventually turned to pirates and organized crime. From there, whenever I could no longer rely on them, I betrayed them and used them as shields for the next group. All the while, I sought the poneglyphs, finding 1 or 2 here and there, but never finding the Rio poneglyph. At the end of those 20 years, I wound up in an ancient tomb that was falling apart, having found a poneglyph there that told of nothing but the ancient weapon Pluton. I gave up, unwilling to go on anymore, and I would have been buried alive that day, but someone saved my life against my will, a young, kind-hearted pirate captain who in this time has not yet been born. With nowhere else to go, he allowed me a place on his crew. It was only then that I found a place where I belonged. 20 years of betrayals, and I finally found a group that welcomed me like family. They gave me back my life, my happiness, and my dreams. I finally found friends who would believe in me, to the point where when I crossed paths with Admiral Kuzan and CP9 once again, I surrendered myself to them in hopes of allowing my crew to go free. CP9 agreed, and they kept their word, up until my friends stormed Eni's lobby to save me. CP9 tried to kill them, but their best efforts failed. Eni's lobby was destroyed by a buster call invoked to kill my crew, and it was all in vain. They saved me, and I never doubted them again. Kuzan confronted me afterward, and told me his reasons for leaving me alive. He spared me again because I had found my place, and encouraged me to show him the truth that Ohara fought for. I never met the Admiral again. After years more of training and uncovering ancient mysteries, my captain became Gold D. Rogers' successor as Pirate King. We learned the true history and spread it everywhere in the world. Earlier today, my crew crossed paths with an old man who offered each of us a chance to save something we lost in our pasts. And the result is this. She finished with a sweeping gesture, incorporating the area around her and indicating a distance away from them. All other eyes turned in the direction she pointed, and then widened as they saw 9 of the 10 battleships apparently caught in spontaneous whirlpools, and smoke coming from where the cannons were supposed to be. Only the last of the battleships could keep firing, and none of the cannonballs were impacting the island and towards the other ship off the coast of the island, sailing away from Ohara. The projectile exploded before it made an impact, but to all of the watchers, the intention was clear. That idiot! Kuzan spat before shaking his head. Well, it looks like you were telling the truth about that. Assuming I believe everything else. What happens now? Now we're going to ensure that the world government never finds Ohara again to keep both the scholars and the Tree of Knowledge safe. You have a choice to make, Kuzan. Will you leave the island and continue serving in the Navy? Or will you follow Saul's example? The Vice Admiral and the former Vice Admiral looked at each other. So, you're staying with these scholars? Kuzan asked. I wasn't planning on it, but if they're planning on making it so the world government never finds this island, then it's as good a place as any for me to stay. Saul turned to the adult Robin. I'm guessing that all the digging your friends are doing is in aid of that? He asked, gesturing to the many piles of earth that were starting to pile up, while holes dotted the island. Yes, but the exact process that we're going to use isn't something we can afford to allow anyone find out. If they learn how we hid the island, they may be able to find it. Justice changes depending on where you're standing, but if the fact that these people, who claim to be Gold Roger's successors, have come back here to change the past or any indication, it looks like you're choosing the better path, Saul. All eyes turned back to Kuzan, who had removed his sunglasses and was looking the giant in the eye. But I still have my justice to follow, so I'm sorry, but I can't abide by this. I assumed that you would say that. That being the case, you will need to leave at once on the evacuation ship, to ensure that they're protected on their way to wherever they're going. Kuzan sighed, replacing his sunglasses. Fine, but I still have questions. I'll answer them for you once I've finished my business with the evacuees. She turned her eyes to the figure beside Kuzan, taking care with her words for discretion. Mr. Swordsman, tell Mr. Cook to extract as much food as he can from those battleships, especially plant products. Then tell Miss Navigator, Mr. Shipwright, and Mr. Warlord to meet me at the coast nearest the evacuation ship with those 3 agents that I incapacitated, exactly 6 minutes from now. Mr. Doctor, ensure that they're stable, then give Nami whatever help she needs. With that, she vanished, as did the figure that had accompanied Kuzan. The Vice Admiral sighed again before he vanished as well. Bunch of show-offs, Saul grumbled, sinking into a sitting position. What just happened? Young Robin asked. The shave technique lets you move fast enough that you seem to have disappeared by kicking the ground 10 times in a second. It's kind of common in the Grand Line, and very common in the upper echelons of the Marines and world government, the doctor explained as he finished bandaging up Olvia. Stepping back, he removed his hood, showing beneath it a furry head that was more animal than human, resembling a raccoon dog with antlers and a pink and blue hat. Before you ask, I'm a reindeer who ate the human fruit, he said, with a long-suffering tone that made it clear he had to clarify that too often. Olvia, make sure you take it easy. And take it from someone who knows firsthand. After getting a parent back when you thought you lost them, the pain of losing them again is unbearable. I'll be back. And with that, he too shaved away. Young Robin looked up at her mother. All of this time, I was studying so that I could join you when you left again. Mom. Whatever happens from now on, please let me stay with you, she said, tears coming to her eyes again. Olvia slowly brought her into an embrace again. I promise, Robin. From now on, if we can stay together, we will. Aboard the evacuation ship, the evacuees were waiting nervously, from the moment that strange black figure had intercepted the cannonball aimed to kill them, and then flown over to the other ship. Nobody had said anything or moved a muscle. Then the figure had come back, landed on the deck of the ship, and commanded them to drop the anchor. The authority in his voice outweighed the youthfulness thereof, and as soon as they obeyed, he had sat down on the deck, unmoving. One of the people on board had begun. My crewmate will give you all the answers you need whenever she gets here, he had replied with a tone of finality. And that was the last that anyone spoke. It took a couple more minutes before, out of nowhere, another figure materialized on the ship's deck, causing almost everyone to jump. The figure looked around before speaking in a cool feminine voice. Let me make myself clear to you. Ohara's scholars have discovered enough of the world government's dark secrets that it is determined to annihilate the entire island to make an example. As you saw, certain affiliates are unwilling to take so much as the slightest risk that any scholars will survive. Ohara is now a criminal nation, and were it not for the intervention of my crew, it would be completely destroyed, and all of you would be dead. As it is, we intend to ensure Ohara's survival, so we are going to hide the island to ensure that the world government will never find it, and it will be many years before anyone is able to leave the island again. Anyone who remains on Ohara now will be seen as an associate to the scholars, who the world government will stop at nothing to kill. With all of that said, you have a decision to make. If you stay aboard this evacuation ship, you will be escorted to wherever the Marines have prepared for you. You may begin your lives anew and forget about Ohara. Or, you may choose to stay on the island and live your lives there. We can offer you no more than 5 minutes to make up your minds. One person aboard hesitantly spoke. I heard that the scholars were plotting to destroy the world. Their only intention was to learn history. Some of the poneglyphs do indeed contain the knowledge of the ancient weapons, which are capable of destroying the world. But the scholars' intention was never to revive them. Even so, the risk alone that they could learn what's written on those stones is dangerous enough for the world government to kill anyone who researches them. That's all I can say. Any more details would endanger your lives as well. A certain red-haired woman spoke up next. How can you be sure that we'll be safe after that Marine tried to kill us? She said, glowering. You will be traveling with Vice Admiral Kuzan, who can be trusted to keep you safe. Nobody you encounter will have the power to stand up to a devil fruit user of his caliber. Devil fruit? So he's a monster just like that Robin girl? Asked one of the kids. A strange, unearthly chill spread over the deck for a few seconds but faded when the female figure shook her head at the other figure. Then she spoke again. I truly cannot fathom how you ever saw it as a good idea to provoke someone who had power beyond anything you could match. You're only fortunate that she only wanted to be left alone. If she had been less tolerant of your abuse. What the hell are you talking about? You honestly expect me to believe that that good-for-nothing Robin was, MMPH. The red-haired woman's speech abruptly cut off when hands sprouted from her shoulder and covered her mouth. Then the figure removed her hood, revealing a black-haired woman identical to Olvia, staring at Roji with an unreadable expression. I still don't fully understand why I bothered to save your life when you treated me as nothing more than a slave. The island is my home. The scholars are my friends. But you, all of you showed me nothing but cruelty for my entire life, and you would leave me to die without a second thought. I know, because I saw it happen. I saw you refuse me entry onto the evacuation ship, leaving me to face the buster call. I with nothing but the clothes on my back. Now, after decades of more pain and sacrifice than any of you can begin to imagine, I found a way to return to the past long enough to save Ohara. And when I learned that, I thought that despite your feelings and actions towards me, it wasn't worth it to allow Sakazuki to end all of your lives. Yes. That's what I thought when I came here. She let the sentence hang there for several seconds, during which many of those on board began to sweat. Then the arms vanished from Roji's body. But it's too late for me to change my mind now. Regardless of what I may think you deserve, my offer still stands. You have 3 minutes left. That was all she said that was audible. She whispered a few words to the other figure before her form vanished in a flurry of petals, and the other figure spoke again. Anyone who isn't leaving the ship, go below deck, and brace yourselves. You're going to be getting out of here in a hurry. Slowly, with shame on the vast majority of their faces, the civilians began silently filing into the ship. If you have questions, Kuzan, I suggest that you ask them now. When my captain brings back any who choose to stay on the island, if there are any such civilians, you will be leaving. Kuzan frowned heavily but sighed as he got his thoughts together. What did you do to the battleships? Kuzan finally asked, seeing the 10 ships stagnant in the ocean, with no serious damage on any aside from Sakazuki's. My crewmates destroyed the cannons. Apart from that, the ships should be relatively undamaged. All of the Marines and agents are unconscious. Most of them are uninjured. Spandine and his 2 agents will likely need severe treatment, but they will survive. The only one who we killed is Sakazuki. He was too dangerous to be left alive. Kuzan sighed, shaking his head. I suppose I should be thanking you for holding back as much as you did, Nico Robin. I would have expected you to leave no survivors after what you went through. Let it never be said that Ohara will kill to protect its research. Its civilians, on the other hand. Robin trailed off. Kuzan was silent for several seconds more. You expected that I wouldn't agree to abandon the Marines and stay on Ohara. Why did you still tell me everything? To give you all the information you need to decide what you plan to do about all of this. Even if things don't go the way they did in my time, the will of D still survives. It's only grown stronger since the blank century, and before another century ends, it will succeed in destroying the world government. You're not blind, Kuzan. The 5 Elder Stars would have gladly chosen Sakazuki as their next fleet admiral because they approve of his style. I know very well that you do not, but the system is corrupted. They care more about their agenda than they do justice. I have no doubts that you know that. Kuzan's face remained unreadable. The choice is ultimately in your hands. But if I may offer a suggestion for your report, tell your superiors that the scholars put up a significant fight, but the Buster Call ultimately succeeded. And how's that going to work once they find out that Ohara is still here? Kuzan asked, his eyes narrowing. I told you, we're going to hide the island. If you tell them the truth, you'll be left looking as foolish as Mont Blanc Noland, she replied simply. Whatever you decide, I assure you that despite the truth of Ohara fading into darkness, its will shall remain shining brightly. You're planning on making another Fishman Island? Kuzan asked quietly. Robin remained silent for several seconds. Before I forget, she said at last, reaching into her robe, I've had quite a bit of free time the last few places that we visited. She withdrew a small book from her robe and held it out to Kuzan. A few details of things yet to come that I believe would be in everyone's best interest to prevent. It's your choice what you do with it. But my recommendation is to give it to Kong's successor as Fleet Admiral, Sengoku. Kuzan eyed the book before taking it. I suppose that what's written in here is going to help your crew out as well. Perhaps, perhaps not. I have other things planned that the scholars and myself of this time will accomplish when the time is right. But let me make one thing clear to you, Kuzan. From the day my captain started his journey until the day he ended it, he was never involved in a single fight where he was the first offender. Ohara will abide by the same standards. And the fact that we just tried to destroy the island? My crew has absolved that. And you're not looking for revenge? Spandine is broken. Sakazuki is dead. You're cooperating. The truth of what happened today is under wraps. And Ohara and all of its knowledge will survive. That alone is enough to spite the government. I won't deny that I strongly considered doing what ostensibly earned me my bounty in my time. But I'm not going to set a bad example for the scholars, least of all my younger self. Kuzan's face was perfectly blank. After a few more seconds of silence, Luffy returned from the ship alone. No one came. I'm not surprised. I suggest that you brace yourself once you're aboard, Kuzan. Kuzan stared at her, then glanced down at the book before pocketing it. Sengoku will know everything that happened today. Except for your names. It'll be his choice what story he tells everyone else. Robin nodded, after which Luffy picked up the somewhat indignant Vice Admiral and set him on his shoulders, along with the 3 nearby unconscious agents, in full body casts, she noted, before taking off towards the ship. Nami, is the island ready? Robin asked. Everyone else should have the tunnel network finished by the time we get back. What do you have planned now? Came the voice from beside her. Robin turned to address her 3 crewmates directly, a small smile on her face. We need the evacuation ship to be as far away as possible as fast as possible, so I'd like you 3 to combine your strength. Oh, that technique. This should be fun, Frankie said with a grin, cracking his metallic knuckles before stepping to the shoreline. Jinbei and Nami wordlessly took their own positions, Nami shaving to higher ground and Jinbei moving into the water. As soon as Luffy returned again, the 3 took their stances. Ready, Nami said, beginning to spin her cleam attack. Set, Frankie continued, his arms beginning to inflate. Go, Jinbei finished, taking his position in the water and gathering as much force as he could form in his hands. Fishman Karate. Max Cola Power. Tornado Tempo. Then, all at once, they fired. Coup de blast. The force from Nami's cleam attack melded with Frankie's wind cannon, creating a jet of wind heading straight for the sails of the evacuation ship. At the same time, the currents Jinbei flung towards the keel and underside carried almost enough force to lift the ship off of the water's surface. They impacted the ship mere seconds after they were launched, and not 30 seconds later, the ship was gone over the horizon. Luffy, do one more quick search of the battleships, and ensure that nobody is awake, Robin said. Luffy nodded, and a moment later, the beach was empty. Back at the Tree of Knowledge, the scholars had used all of the resources they had to attempt to secure the books within. The situation had been explained away courtesy of Olvia, Clover, and the other 5 figures, who were suffering varying degrees of fatigue. They had removed their hoods, and given their names. The young green-haired man with one eye, Roronoa Zoro. The young man with curly black hair and a long nose, Usopp. The young blonde-haired man with one eye covered by hair and a very curly eyebrow, Sanji. The young blue-nosed hat wearing reindeer that ate the human fruit, Tony Chopper. And the skeleton with the black afro, animated by the revive fruit, Brook. The time travelers had only finished their laborious task of digging a few minutes after Robin's future self had that there was now a gaping hole near the entrance of the Tree of Knowledge leading to a series of complex tunnels that apparently ran through the entire island, and the fact that a great deal of soil had been removed from the island and thrown out to the sea were the source of most of the questions the scholars posed to them, but the pirates refused to reveal what their plan was. "Trust me, you don't want to ruin the surprise," Usopp had said. They had learned only the basics of the rest of the crew. The whale shark fish man Jinbei, the rubber captain Luffy, the weather-manipulating navigator Nami, the cyborg Frankie, and the future version of their own child genius, Nico Robin, before 4 of said pirates reappeared in front of the hole. "All right, we've got no time to waste. Milky Sea," she declared, shooting a continuous stream of something that looked like clouds into the pit, flowing as a torrent from the staff in her hands. After several minutes, when the clouds seemed to have filled the pit, the final figure appeared. "They're all unconscious, Robin," he said. Robin nodded and glanced at Nami, who nodded in turn before shaving away. With that, Robin closed her eyes and knelt on the ground. "All of you, please keep as quiet as possible. I need perfect concentration in order to use the full extent of my powers," she said. Then she placed her left hand over her heart, and her right hand on the grass. Awakening the flower fruit's true powers had put her easily in the same league as the monster trio. The base of the flower fruit's abilities enabled her to grow her body parts on any surface. The more she pushed her abilities, the more limbs she could grow. Training with the revolutionaries had enabled her to duplicate her entire body. But none of that touched on the fruit's true potency. Much in the way that flowers drew energy from the soil, air, and light where they were planted, tapping into the full power enabled her to draw energy from the same sources, giving her the ability to not only control a great number more of limbs, but also to make them grow. "Mill and fleur," she breathed. A breeze spread out from her, petals flying through the air to every end of the island. Then, at the very edges on 2 sides, arms began to grow. 1, 10, 20, 50, 100, 500, 1000, all building up and up and up, until 500,000 arms had grown on each end, formed into 2 massive angelic wings. And even then, they grew larger, until each wing was the size of the Tree of Knowledge itself. "Alas de Dios," Robin finished. The massive wings began to move, slowly at first, then faster and faster, shaking the whole island with each wingbeat. Then, slowly, as the wingbeats accelerated to 2 every second, the island began to rise. Beads of sweat already formed on Robin's forehead, but with every inch of Ohara linked to her energy, both refreshing her and reminding her why she was doing this, she continued to put in the force she needed. In merely a minute, the island of Ohara had fully risen above the sea. And all the while, Nami ran along the edge of the island, casting more clouds beneath her and sending more and more support and buoyancy beneath the island, giving it the cushion it needed to defy gravity and rise. And with each bit of cloud that replaced the earth, the island became lighter, giving Robin more energy to raise it above the sea, and gravity less holds to prevent its ascension. The island rose higher and higher, faster and faster. The Oharan scholars and Saul collectively failed to pick up their jaws for the next 10 minutes as their entire island rose into the sky, clouds continuing to spread out and form beneath it until it began to form a beach around the edges of the island. Their jaws sagged even further when they saw a large barrier of clouds above them, and even more so when some of the figures raised fists and swords, and with an impossible burst of energy, created a gap in the barrier large enough for Ohara to pass through. The next 3 minutes were spent in a tunnel with clouds pressing in on every side, and then, at last, they broke into a sight comparable to a dream, with a sea of clouds around them. Yet the island did not even slow in its ascension, rising even higher. A few more minutes, in which Robin's panting became audible, and they passed through another barrier in the same way. At long last, the wings began to slow, and as the edges of Ohara reached the borders of the higher cloud sea, Nami finished her final lap around the island. The clouds around the island connected with the sea and the wings slowed to a stop before vanishing in a storm of flower petals. Robin collapsed, exhausted from the effort, but smiling as she stared at the area around her. Thank goodness. What the Saul managed. Ladies and gentlemen, Usopp began theatrically, let me be the first to welcome you to the White Sea, located 10,000 meters above sea level, where neither Marines nor pirates nor the government will be able to find you. It was the only option I could think of, Robin panted. The only, don't you think that this was a little extreme? One of the scholars asked incredulously. No way, huffed Nami, collapsing on the ground near Robin, nearly as winded as the archaeologist from her running. If they found out Ohara survived, they'd pull out all the stops trying to kill you. She's right. The only places on sea level where you'd have any chance of being safe would be the islands that Old Man Whitebeard protects, and we've only got an hour in this time, nowhere near long enough to get you to one of those. And the only group of people who you'd be safe with won't be anything substantial for another 10 years, Frankie said grimly. And even if we could choose one of those options, that still wouldn't save the Tree of Knowledge, Robin said, her breathing almost under control. So, we're living in the sky now, but how are we supposed to travel? What about food and water? And young Robin asked. Traveling will have to wait a few more years, Zoro said. Like Frankie said, the group of people you'll be safe with won't be powerful enough to keep you safe until 10 years from now. Besides, Ohara needs to lie low for the next few years to be sure the world government can't finish the job they started. As for the rest, Sanji continued. A lot of houses on the island are bound to have food and water, and I stole a lot of food from those battleships. You have more than enough to start producing your own crops. And I can give you any instruction you need about Sky Islands in general, Nami said. Yes, Robin said, slowly pushing herself into a sitting position. We have approximately 30 minutes remaining before the power that sent us here expires. We intend to utilize that time to pass on all the knowledge we have to give. After all, there's no greater treasure. The next moment found Luffy appearing before the scholars, mounds of paper and several pens in his hands. So, split up and take notes, everyone. If the scholars had had any resentment for their forced relocation, the knowledge that the Straw Hat Pirates imparted to them would have destroyed it. Knowledge of the future was a treasure as priceless as the oldest books in the Tree of Knowledge, and they took as much care as they could to learn all that the crew had to tell them. The Pirate King Monkey D. Luffy steadfastly refused to tell them about One Piece, the Void Century, or anything about Raftel beyond how to get there. Learning about the road poneglyphs and exactly how hard it would be to acquire the knowledge thereof served to help with dissuading them from asking. Ultimately, they had satisfied themselves by learning of Luffy's adventures, his childhood, and particularly his parentage. Learning that he was the son of the one who would ultimately be able to keep them safe down on the surface again was the source of no small amount of interest. He even confided in them about his brothers, and though they were taken aback, even in the sins of the father. Roronoa Zoro, the world's greatest swordsman, spoke only of the knowledge of battle. He told of the swordsmanship that he learned both growing up and from Dracul Mahawk himself. It did little to help the scholars, none of whom were swordsmen, but they could appreciate the secrets of swordplay that made the difference between masterful and world-class as much as any swordsman worth their steel. He told them of what he knew of the 6 powers, demonstrating the shave technique, giving a rough semblance of Tempest Kick with his sword, asking Sanji to demonstrate the moonwalk technique, which he had done with no small amount of snark towards Zoro, and describing the iron body, finger pistol, and paper art techniques. This they took in diligently, knowing it was a government secret, and he told them of the 3 forms of hockey, demonstrating each one in turn, his captain giving only the barest taste of the 3rd and rarest form for them to note upon. This last gift, all of them elected to study intensely. Nami the navigator informed them of everything she could tell them about Sky Islands, having spent 2 years on one studying the weather. Her instructions consisted as much about getting used to the thinner air, denser sea, and expected weather patterns as they did, producing the tools needed to change the weather the way that they desired to. The concept of weather balls was incredible, and considering their current house arrest of sorts, many of the scholars were quite keen on looking into the designs. And the knowledge of dials and their various abilities and usages attracted just as much interest. Usopp the sniper was a little of everywhere in his teaching, between his gadgets, his pop greens, his tales of great adventures that they had had. The scholars were just as much everywhere in trying to keep up with what he said. Sanji the chef's group took note only on recipes and food preparation, most notably of which were the 99 attack cuisine recipes that were indigenous to the Momoiro kingdom. It was a testament to how far he was willing to go for the sake of the ladies on the crew that he informed them of the island's nature and why he had gone there. The scholars then made certain that they had duplicates of every recipe to ensure that they would never have to go there, and then began hoping beyond all hope that they wouldn't have to go there anyway once they joined the revolutionaries, with whom was the kingdom's queen. Tony Chopper the doctor spent half of his time lecturing on medical skills that nobody else in the world could match and the other half lecturing on methods of altering the powers of zone devil fruits. With the knowledge in mind that they would likely need to take care of themselves for the next few years in mind, they ensured that they noted everything on both subjects, though they seemed to be more interested in the latter of them. Chopper ultimately left them a few samples of his rumble balls along with the knowledge. Frankie the shipwright told them the basics of shipbuilding, ship maintenance, and ship dismantling, and the fact that he was the apprentice of the man who built the Oro Jackson was more than enough for them to be thoroughly interested in his words. He also told them all he could of the way he modified himself, the secrets he learned from Vegapunk, and the potency of cola as a power source. It was a testament to the sheer strangeness of how the day had already gone that they took that in stride. Brook the musician told of all that he had experienced in his life before he died the first time, though the fact that his home was also in the West Blue removed much of his story. They did, however, take particular note of what they heard of Laboon, silently vowing to do what they could to tell him the truth. Brook then refocused by writing out some of his greater hits while lecturing on the potency of devil fruit abilities, which, especially for Robin's sake, they took particular interest in. Jinbei spoke of Fishman Island and its past, the dark history that the world government had with them, the bright future that they fought for, the ones who strove to destroy it, and the events leading up to that. He spoke of Fishman anatomy and biology, of Fishman and Merman karate, and of their dreams of living alongside humans in peace. The scholars one and all pledged to do whatever they could to fend off the prejudice in the world when they returned to it. And Nico Robin? She told her mother and her younger self of all of the fond memories that she had with the crew. How they had rescued her from the depths of despair. How they had laughed and cried together, suffered and healed together, fought and won together, and maintained their unity even when apart. Not once did she speak of the horrors she endured during her 20 years of wandering. She spoke only of her friends, her family, and of the revolutionaries, the leader of whom would become her captain's father 3 years from then. What she impressed more than anything else was that when 8 years had passed away, they would need to be on Dawn Island in the East Blue to meet up with Monkey D. Dragon and join his cause. Through it all, young Robin took in as much of the knowledge as she could. Though her hand never left that of her mother, at last, however, she spoke to her older self. "What's going to happen to you when you leave?" young Robin asked. The older Robin smiled sadly. "What I've done today won't change Ohara in my time. But I've already earned my happy ending with my crew. I'm just glad to fix what happened today, and a great deal more problems that are yet to come." Yes, Olvia couldn't help but chuckle. "I believe it's a safe assumption that the world government won't expect that Ohara literally flew away. Especially since I misled Kuzan into thinking that we were going to sink it into the ocean instead." Older Robin agreed with a smile. Can I ask something else? That wing thing?" young Robin asked. Robin smiled, and by way of a reply, crossed her arms, upon which 100 arms sprouted from her back. "I developed the technique many years ago. Back then, my strength was only enough to fly for 5 seconds. But as it is now, my power's limit is significantly more." "So, I'll be able to fly?" young Robin asked eagerly. Her older self gave her a wide smile. "Yes, you will. In fact, if you start practicing with your powers now with the advice we've given, you should be able to fly freely by the time the Revolutionary Army is ready." The girl beamed and then hesitated briefly before looking hopeful. Can can you take me flying?" Robin returned the girl's smile before gently picking her up and glancing at their mother. "Go on," she said, tears of joy in her eyes. Young Robin smiled at Olvia. Then she felt her older self begin to move. She looked at her, then back at her mother, who was now several feet below. She clung to the dark fabric, noting that it felt oddly insubstantial, but the arms which clutched her to the body underneath were notably not so. "I've got you, Robin, don't worry." And though she knew it was herself speaking, Robin couldn't help but picture her mother, and smiled. Then she took another look as the wings beat more and more, soon bringing her on level with the canopy of the Tree of Knowledge. And when they reached that height, her older self began to glide. Young Robin felt the air currents around her that her older self glided upon, and watched as they circled around the Tree of Knowledge. She saw the library from angles she never would have otherwise. She laughed joyfully. "This is amazing. Oh, it's only just begun," her older self purred. Young Robin clung as tightly as she could. Older Robin went into a dive, heading straight for the lake. Robin froze up with terror, remembering her experience the last time she tried to swim, but just before they reached the water, the dive evened out, and they began skimming along the surface. Hesitantly, Robin dipped her hand in the water, and let out another giggle as she felt the rush, and then her older self flapped her wings again and pulled back up, beginning to soar up higher and higher, easily high above the Tree of Knowledge itself and giving Robin a literal bird's eye view of the dreamlike surrounding sea before folding her wings in. Robin felt her heart jump into her throat as they began to pick up speed, growing faster and faster and heading straight towards the ground. "Don't you dare close your eyes," older Robin whispered. Hesitantly, young Robin obeyed, watching as the ground got closer. 100 feet, 50, 30, 20. And then the wings unfurled, gliding across the surface of the grass once more. And as the speed wore off, Robin beat her wings once more to get upright, and landed gracefully on her feet, right in front of her mother, who promptly began to clap along with everyone else. That was scary, but, wow, younger Robin said, smiling breathlessly. "Woohoo, go, Robin," Luffy cheered. "Encore, encore," Professor Clover concurred exuberantly, drawing many quizzical looks as the applause slowly died down. The man stopped with equal sluggishness, blushing, but still looked hopefully at the chuckling grown Robin. "My apologies, Professor Clover. I would love to demonstrate more." Then, all at once the 10 figures began to shine brightly. "But I'm afraid that that's the signal that our time here is up, so I'm afraid it will have to wait until my younger self can do it. I wish you all the best of luck with your future," Robin said, a hint of sadness in her tone. Olvia embraced her daughter one final time. "I'm prouder of you than words can express, Robin. And I promise, if I ever find the fruit that brought you here, I'll come to see you again." The woman smiled, grudgingly breaking the embrace with her mother to move to stand beside her crew again. As she did, she took a last look at the island. The Tree of Knowledge intact, the buildings undamaged, the vegetation unharmed, and the resources that they needed to make a new life. All was set. She had secured Ohara's future. And as she considered this, in the last few seconds before they vanished, she grinned and let out a strange laugh of pure joy. Darashi-shi-shi-shi-shi-shi-shi. Darashi-shi-shi-shi-shi-shi-shi. Then the light was gone, and Ohara's saviors, the Straw Hat Pirates, with it. A familiar red, stony horizon and salty air greeted the Straw Hat's senses as the light faded. "The Twin Capes again?" Chopper asked curiously. "But isn't this Brook's turn? He's the only one left?" "I thought you said we'd be saving them at either Little Garden or the Florian Triangle," Zoro concurred, turning to his fellow swordsman. The skeleton sighed. "I thought as much at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that saving them at either of those points wouldn't be enough. The only way that they have any chance of reaching Raftel is if they are armed with both the strength and the knowledge they need at the beginning. So, we've come to the outset of the Rumbar Pirates' journey through the Grand Line," Robin concluded, turning to peer over the cliff. And as the crew followed her example, they saw the vaguely familiar form of the Rumbar Pirates' ship, not pristine but exceptionally better than what they found in the Florian Triangle. Sunrise had passed only a short time ago, and most of the crew was lazing and playing music or training. None were close enough to the time travelers to have seen them. "All right, so is this just going to be walking up and explaining things to them, like we did to our past selves on the second jump?" Sanji asked. I don't think so, Brook replied grimly. I remember the mindset that we had before setting out. We were completely confident in our abilities. We were naive. We had enough skill to survive almost to the end of paradise, but even without that ambush, we would not have lasted a day in the New World. He shook his head as he drew Soul Solid. We will need to demonstrate our abilities, and show how thoroughly outclassed they are, before we tell them the truth. I suppose that I should handle that myself. Hold on a second, Brook, I have another idea. All eyes turned to the Straw Hat's sniper, who had a mischievous grin. What if I showed them just how big the difference between us is? I mean, do you think that they could have any chance of beating me? The message sunk in, and Brook slowly shook his head. What do you have in mind, Usopp? Wheel. Have we ever told you the story of what happened to an East Blue pirate named Don Krieg when he entered the Grand Line? It had been a month since the Rumbar pirates had come over Reverse Mountain and docked at the Twin Capes to repair their ship. With nothing to do to bring their extended shore leave to an end any faster, the crew was enjoying the welcome break from not having to worry about sea creatures or other ships crossing their paths at all hours of the day, and not needing to awaken at the crack of dawn in the name of fending off said threats. Many were taking advantage of the break before their adventures began in earnest to get a few extra hours of sleep. Of course, in the event that they slept too long, there was always a foolproof way to get them awake. It's a WHIIITE handkerchief, careful now, knees on the ground, run a wah. Thwack. Thud. That damn song got old the first time you sang it, Brook, Mawaritosuke growled. Yo ho 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 ho. How harsh, the violinist laughed as he got to his feet, discarding the pillow that had struck him. But you did request a sparring session today, didn't you? 5 more minutes, the other swordsman grumbled. Oh, very well, the fencer chuckled as he turned and walked out of the makeshift lodgings by Crocus House. Naturally, the next place he went was the base of the cliffs of the Capes. He descended carefully, despite knowing he had a rescuer waiting if he fell in, who he could see smiling and waiting for him already at the bottom of the cliff. Good morning, Laboon, Brook greeted, perching himself on a rock nearby. The little whale chirped happily in reply, and chirped more as Brook produced his violin and bow. Shall we start the day with your favorite? Boom! Brook cut himself off as an explosion sounded from the cliff. Glancing up, he saw a plume of smoke rising, and grit his teeth. Laboon, stay out of sight. We'll be all right. The whale let out a worried chirp, but sunk into the waves. Brook cursed the fact that he had left his sword in the lodgings as he hastened to climb back up the cliff. In the distant future, he'd be able to move his legs fast enough to be able to run on the water. But for the speed that his technique required, he was no snail at the present time. He ascended the cliff within 30 seconds, and what he found there was nothing that he was expecting. After all, what sane person would expect to see the barren ground suddenly blooming with a myriad of strange and hostile plants attacking his crew? None of the injuries were all that grievous, but there was no end to them. The plants were surrounding the pirates on all sides, and though the entire crew was present, they were making no progress. What in the world is going on here? Brook demanded, dodging out of the way of an oversized Venus flytrap and ducking beneath a flight of green bananas that resembled shurikens. Ask later, fight now, Brook ordered a blonde-haired man with an F-shaped mark beneath his right eye and another on his chin, fending off a massive wolf-shaped structure of pure plant life, sparing a moment to toss Brook the purple cane he was holding. The afro-clad musician grabbed the handle as it flew by, the lower section of purple sliding off from the momentum to reveal the sword beneath. The swordsman began dashing amidst the many plants, blade flashing through stem after giant stem, deflecting shurikens, and slicing through the oversized refleges that were disabling the men. With both Yorkie and himself fighting, the number of plants steadily decreased, and the pirates began winning the fight. Finally, with the entire crew beaten, bruised, bloody, and/or exhausted, all that remained were odd scraps of plant life that were withering as they watched. They were safe. Allow me to reiterate. What in the world was that? Brook huffed. Oh, just killing time, came another voice, prompting all present to look towards its source. Said source was standing at the edge of the cliff. He was a man of average height, but that was all they could tell, considering that the black outfit he wore covered his entire form, from head to toe. Even the slingshot he carried was black. Killing time? You sicked an army of killer plants on us because you were bored? One of the Rumbar pirates demanded indignantly. The man shrugged nonchalantly, fully undisturbed. You haven't been in the Grand Line for very long, have you? He drawled. Damn you. Damn you, Yorkie yelled, charging forward with rage that disguised his tired state. The man didn't move. Special attack, Green Star. Human Drake. He called out. The instant he finished his sentence, what looked like half a dozen miniature men with flowers for their heads leapt up from the ground directly beneath Yorkie, clinging onto his body. The sudden weight was too much for the pirate captain, and he slid to a painful halt far away from the stranger. The stranger then raised his slingshot and pulled it back. Special attack, Green Star. Bamboo Javelin. He released the band, and the projectiles flew towards Yorkie. The moment after they struck, a small grove of bamboo stalks sprang from the ground, instantly growing half as tall as the lighthouse. Yorkie was nowhere to be seen. The remaining pirates charged forward at the sight of this, Brook ahead of them all. The stranger still didn't move, even as Brook sliced away the bamboo with a swipe of his blade, revealing their captain within. Untouched. The stalks merely surrounded him, none piercing his body. You missed, Brook said in what was meant to be a gloating tone, but came out as a sigh of relief. I meant to, the man stated calmly. I'm a sniper first and foremost. If I wanted you guys dead, you would never have seen me. At that moment, the man vanished. Brook blinked. Expect the unexpected. The stranger's voice came from behind him, behind his crew. They had barely begun to turn when he vanished AACK of the opponent. Brook saw him far off to the side, then he was gone again. One slip up, and you're dead. The swordsman felt the whisper an inch from his ear, and throwing caution to the wind, swung his blade around. He struck only air, and the man reappeared in his original position, slingshot raised and ready to fire. That's the way of the Grand Line. And this? The man tilted his slingshot back, firing the projectile straight up, and then fired another projectile at it a moment later. It exploded high above the ground, with enough force that Brook and the rest of the crew fell down. The resulting cloud turned into a bright red skull, leering down at them as if about to strike. Then it dissolved, and all eyes turned back towards the stranger, who stowed his slingshot in his robes. This is your wake-up call. Those words stunned the crew more than anything else. Yorkie slowly got to his feet, dodging around the bamboo, his sword still at the ready. Who are you? He asked coldly. The man raised his hands and lowered his hood. The face was that of a young man with a comically long nose, black hair in an afro-like form, orange ear protectors and goggles, and a white hat. His expression was unreadable. My name is Usopp. I'm part of a crew known as the Straw Hat Pirates, and I'm here to demonstrate for you exactly how little chance you have of surviving the Grand Line as you are now. We won't be discouraged. We knew that there would be challenges here, but we'll be ready when we meet someone else like you, Yorkie vowed. Usopp chuckled sardonically. Someone else like me, you say? Please. I beat your entire crew without even trying, with a slingshot. You saw that I could have killed you right away, and I didn't. And like I said, I'm only part of the Straw Hat Pirates. I'm not the captain. In fact, I'm the weakest out of all of us. The Rumbar pirates paled in unison as he said that, and the pallor only intensified as 9 more figures clad in black suddenly appeared beside him, one by one. They varied in shape and size, but none of their faces were visible. Brook swallowed, and spoke again. And you're really here to show us all of this because of boredom? No, but there are those who would. Brook and all of the listeners froze as one of the figures stepped forward, and spoke with his voice. This, my friends, is in aid of a hope that you will not perish in the Grand Line, and subsequently leave Laboon alone. You seek something that nobody has found for centuries, and ultimately, you don't have what it takes to grasp it. Who are you to say that? Brook demanded, getting past the oddness of his voice. The man turned towards him, and he felt his anger falter at the stare that came through the hood. Former acting captain of the Rumbar Pirates and current musician of the Straw Hat Pirates, Soul King, Brook, age 91. Brook's jaw fell open again, and Yorkie looked at the speaking stranger in haunted awe. Brook? He whispered. Captain Yorkie, it has been a very long time, the man nodded. If you're really me, then show your face, Brook requested. Yo ho 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 ho. The so-called Brook laughed, just as Brook did. The resemblance isn't much. As I said, we're here to prevent you from perishing in the Grand Line. As you did in my time. It's only thanks to a strange old man with a very powerful devil fruit that I can stand before you now, as a crewmate of the second Pirate King, and potentially save you from your demise. Second, what are you? How did? Yorkie stuttered. After a moment, he got a hold of himself, and sighed, looking at the future Brook grimly. Tell me everything. 2 months from now, we set sail into the Grand Line with our ship fully finished, vowing to Laboon that we would return one day. We made significant progress before disaster struck. You and many others on the crew caught an incurable disease, and we had no choice but to send you off from the rest of us before it spread any further, leaving me to be captain from then on. We nearly made it to the end of the first half of the Grand Line before we met an extremely powerful crew. Those of us who did not die in the fighting died from their poisoned weapons. I died as well, of course, but came back by use of the revive fruit. But as the area where we died was thick with fog, it took me a year's worth of searching to find my body, by which time I had decayed until only my skeleton remained. I would suggest you brace yourselves. The future Brook raised his hands to his hood. He waited for a few seconds, giving the Rumbar pirates time to follow his advice, and lowered his hood. Nobody screamed, but several gasped and recoiled. Forewarned wasn't prepared. Really, to actually see that beneath the hood was just a skull with a black afro. Said skull then began talking again, still in Brook's voice. The attacking pirates destroyed the rudder, leaving me stranded there alone for the next 5 decades. It was only our promise to Laboon that kept me sane and prevented me from killing myself. After 50 years, however, I came across this crew as they sailed through the Grand Line. The captain, Monkey D. Luffy, eagerly invited me to join his crew, finding my new appearance awesome, rather than repulsive, desiring my musical capabilities, and having met Laboon at the Twin Capes, where he was still waiting after all of those years, despite Crocus having confirmed our death. The skeleton seemed to smile. I accepted, and traveled with the crew that had given me new life until Luffy became the Pirate King. And a year later, we found a man who let each of us return to the past for a single hour to save something that we lost. I am here now, my friends, in hopes that I can prevent your demise in this ocean. Silence fell among the Rumbar pirates, stretching on for a full minute. Yorkie finally broke it. That's not everything, Brook. You said that your captain was the second Pirate King. Who's the first? A rookie in this time by the name of Gold D. Roger, interjected another of the cloaked figures. All eyes turned to her as she removed her hood, revealing long black hair and cool blue eyes. Nico Robin, archaeologist of the Straw Hat Pirates and last survivor of O'Hara, she explained, and then continued. The reason that nobody has been able to conquer the Grand Line to this date is that they have all lacked the proper knowledge. The only way to reach Raftel is with the map that leads to it, and that map is inscribed on 4 separate poneglyphs. Without the ability to decipher those stones, it is utterly impossible to reach the end of the Grand Line. And there are only 2 ways to decipher the language. Either study the text so that you can read it, or interpret the meaning using a special power known as the Voice of All Things, a power that incredibly few people possess. Roger was one of them, the old Brook continued. 27 years from now, he reached Raftel and became king of the pirates. But he had been suffering a terminal illness for the duration of the journey. Nobody could cure it, and the only doctor in the world capable of stabilizing it was Crocus, who traveled with him to learn what became of our crew. 1 year after obtaining his title, Roger turned himself into the Marines and was publicly executed in Logatown, the very place where he was born. But the last words he spoke in his life promised all of his treasure to whomever could find it. It was another 22 years before his successor, my captain, set sail, and another 2 after that before he succeeded him. Amidst the awe of the tale was a decided air of dread among the Rumbar pirates. So, we're already doomed to failure? One of them asked. Keep up, man, that's what Brook is here to change, said another, looking hopefully at the skeleton. You got a way to help us, right? The skeleton's expression did not visibly change, but more and more of the crew began looking at him with hope. If you do not want history to repeat itself, you have 2 choices, the old Brook said at last. Either spend the next several you can reach the end of the Grand Line, or spend the next several years training so that you can sail with the Roger pirates when they arrive. If you seek the end of the Grand Line, those are your only options. Some of the crew wilted. Others, including Brooke and Yorkie, straightened more, their faces set in determined lines. If we must set aside another decade of training so that we can make this journey, then so be it, Yorkie nodded firmly. And if it comes to the point where we must reform ourselves beneath a greater captain, then for Laboon's sake, so be it, Brooke agreed with frigid determination. All of those who had faltered snapped into equal firmness with their captain and Brooke. Very good, Nico Robin said with a smirk, withdrawing a pair of tomes from her robe. She approached the heads of the Rumbar pirates, giving one to each of them. One of those is a guide on how to discern the meaning of poneglyphs. If you deem yourselves strong enough to have a fighting chance of reaching the end of the Grand Line, then that will be the final key. The other is a record of future events. With how far we are in the past, all of you have a significant chance to change things. Countless atrocities and disasters can be averted. But the choice is ultimately yours. And now, growled an eager voice from another cloaked figure, who removed his hood to show a green-haired man with one eye scarred shut. How about some more thorough training instructions while we have the time? The remainder of the hour was the second hardest and longest of the Rumbar pirates' lives, after the one where they had to force themselves to ignore Laboon before they headed to Reverse Mountain. So many techniques, so many abilities, so many options, so much pain. So much pain. 5 minutes after that declaration of training, during which time both Laboon, to his joy, and the freshly awakened Crocus, to his bemusement, had been briefed on the situation and their extended hiatus, they had plunged into the most memorable training session that any of them could imagine. Monkey D. Luffy was a young-looking man with a harmless-looking face, and being made of rubber made him look more funny than threatening at first. He also had the ability to knock them out with a single thought, and claimed that he could punch through the red line if he had more time. They believed him after they watched him inflate his fist and hardened it into what looked like obsidian. Suffice to say that the group following him learned the basics of hockey training, the hard way. Roronoa Zoro made up for his youthful appearance with his missing eye and the sheer aura of power and intimidation that he exuded. Aside from Brooke, every swordsman among the Rumbar pirates, and several who had been considering using swords, learned what he had to teach them, the words of the world's greatest swordsmen engraving themselves within their hearts, never to fade. Jinbei the fishman and Sanji the chef spent most of their time instructing on melee and martial arts techniques. But in Sanji's case, he along with Nami the navigator, Chopper the human reindeer doctor, and Frankie the cyborg shipwright spent a significant portion of time lecturing the Rumbar pirate or pirates who held that crucial position on the crew. The guidance was enough to double each of their respective skills, and set them on the path to grow more in the coming years. Nico Robin spoke privately with Yorkie concerning the knowledge she had given him and how he could use it. Assassinations, celestial dragons, framings, revolutions. There was enough to make the captain's head spin. Robin was adamant about ensuring that the book found its way to Ohara when he had changed all that he could, but he promised that he would do everything in his power to reshape the future for the better. And Brooke, naturally, spent the time talking to his older self, learning more about his devil fruit powers and more about the crew that he could and would sail with in his next life. 50 years seemed like a long time to wait, but with all of the changes he knew that the time traveler's arrival would bring, it would be a welcome challenge and distraction to locate each member who would be his comrade in the future, however things turned out. As the final minutes of the time travel arrived, however, and the two crews faced each other fully, the Straw Hat Pirates as a whole seemed a bit melancholy. The one of their number in the past was the one who noticed first. "What's the matter? You've reshaped the entire future with what you've done here," Brooke said curiously. "Yeah, but it really sucks that it only works here," Sanji replied. "This is an alternate reality from the one that we live in," Robin said. "We can change all that we want here, but it won't change anything for us. And this is our final jump to the past. After this, we'll be returning to our own time. Even so, I consider it well worth it to have been able to correct so much that could have gone wrong. Laboon can avoid his many scars this time," the skeletal Brooke said, his smile visible. "And I would have returned 1,000 times just to be able to see all of the Rumbar pirates once more. I have no regrets." The rest of the crew smiled in agreement. And in the next moment, the time travelers began to shine. "And that would be our cue," the skeleton continued. He swept his arm down in an elaborate bow. "Farewell, my comrades. I will always cherish this encounter in my heart." The Rumbar pirates smiled. "Or I would, if I had a heart." Yo-ho-ho-ho-ho-ho, skull joke. The Rumbar pirate's face faltered. "Yoro. Be glad that you only had to put up with one of those while we were here," Sanji muttered. "What do you mean? That was genius. Yo-ho-ho-ho," Past Brook chortled, earning several exasperated looks from his comrades. Yorkie, however, had a wide grin as he faced the skeleton. "Don't ever change, Brook. Captain's orders." Tears leaked from the skeleton's sockets as he raised his arm in a salute. And then the light vanished, and the pirates disappeared along with it. Wakefulness was slow to return to the Straw Hats as they woke up back on Rusukaina Island. One and all, they were lying on the bare ground of the forest, and as they stirred from their sleep, they felt simultaneously as though they had just awakened from the best sleep of their lives and as though they hadn't slept in days. The fatigue slipped away as they got better hold of their senses, but as all of them, even the heavy sleepers like Luffy and Zoro, got to their feet, a different sort of weakness made itself clear to them in the form of a familiar growling sound. "Oh, I'm so hungry," the rubber man moaned. "So am I," Usopp agreed, clutching his belly. "I'm feeling rather famished myself," Robin said with a frown. "My apologies." All attention snapped to where a familiar old man stood alongside 10 more figures, shrouded in black just as the Straw Hats had been. "Thought you said you'd be gone by the time we got back?" Zoro asked quizzically. "I suppose I underestimated your efforts. You see, my powers work by sending a projection of your consciousness across time and space. Your real bodies have been here on this island the whole time. It was only your minds that returned to the past. And I regret to say that I underestimated the amount of energy you would be using. I had no choice but to draw it out of your own stores, as I didn't have enough energy of my own to preserve you all for the full 11 hours. The resulting fatigue has had you all asleep for the last 2 days." "2 whole days?" demanded most of the crew, none louder than Luffy. "Yes, but on the bright side, that afforded me enough time to recover my powers so that I could show you how you've changed things." The Straw Hats stared at the man. "I told the truth when I said that what you did would change nothing in this world. Not as far as history goes, anyway. But it appears that even my studies are not enough to understand the exact mechanics of how time and dimensions work. After all, in my allowing you to return to your pasts and save your loved ones, I saved my own life." With that, the old man's form began to change. The raggedy black outfit with which he was shrouded smoothed out, and grew more curvaceous. His grizzled hair straightened and brightened, growing only over the back of his head, rather than over his eyes. The face grew more youthful, and the blue eyes beneath were revealed. The crew as a whole stared in shock, but Robin was outright gaping. Mom?" The form of Nico Olvia smiled lovingly. "I promised your younger self that I would stay with her, but while her powers development helped her to come and go from Ohara as she wished, the rest of us were not so fortunate. Then, one day, she came across the astral fruit, and thought that it would be the perfect way for us to stay together despite being apart. But looking more closely into the fruit's mechanics, it didn't take me long to understand that it was the one that sent you back to me in the first place. I trained my powers until I gained the ability to look across space and time, and while much of my research has gone to expanding the tree of knowledge, I never stopped searching for the one timeline where you had found that strange old man. Then, when I found this one, I understood. It was a future that I had already written, but had yet to experience myself." "I'm getting a headache from all of this," Nami grumbled. Olvia chuckled. "Don't think about it too hard, but anyway, I should get to the main point. I'm not the only one who's here to thank you." The remaining figures lowered their hoods in unison. Portgas d'Ace, Kuina, Belmere, Banchina, Dr. Hiralik, Tom, Yorkie, Fisher Tiger, Don Quixote Rocinante, and a strange little girl. One that they all recognized with merely a thought, going merry. The Straw Hat Pirates continued to stare as their deceased loved ones smiled back at them. "I can't maintain our presences here for much longer. We've been waiting for you all to awaken for quite a while. But suffice to say that your efforts will bear fruit for you in this world as well," Olvia smiled. "We may not be able to be together as much as we'd like to, Luffy, but I can still visit you," Ace said with a smile. All of us have gone through our lives for the better thanks to your interventions, Fisher Tiger continued. Well, so far, after all, besides Olvia, it's only been a year for each of us since we last met you all, Kuina smirked. But the fact remains that we can return the favor thanks to Olvia, Banchina smiled. You should bring Trafalgar, too, when we can all be together again, Mary suggested. It would be wonderful to see how strong Law has become, Rocinante said quietly. Bring all your friends, we'll make a party out of it, Belmere chuckled. Now, that sounds like fun, Yorkie grinned. I'm really looking forward to seeing and hearing more of what you've done, Chopper, Hirlik said with a wide, proud smile. And it would be my honor to see the Thousand Sunny as it will one day be, Tom finished. Not one of the Straw Hats was capable of speaking. Silence fell for 10 seconds before Olvia sighed with a chuckle, and spoke again. Allow me to clarify. My powers do have limits, but I can manage a group projection like this every once in a while. So, once a year, on the anniversary of the day you saved us all, we'll come to this world from sunrise to sunrise. One day out of the year, we'll be together again. It was Luffy who finally broke out of the stupor first. Even his growling belly seemed suppressed as he rushed forwards and crushed his brother tight within his grasp. Ace can come back. I'm so happy, he cried. The fireman simply held his brother tight. Once a year? Considering that I never thought I could ever see you again, that's more priceless than One Piece itself, Nami whispered, tears of joy coming from her eyes as she embraced her mother. And so it went, the Straw Hats embracing their loved ones, Mary taking turns hugging each of the crew. The only exceptions were Zoro, who merely grasped hands with Kuina as they had the day they made their vow, and Sanji, who was content to simply sing the praises of Olvia for all of her goodness and mercy. Alas, it couldn't last longer than a minute or so, for it was then that the light began emanating from the 10 figures. The Straw Hats slowly, most reluctantly, released their friends and family and stepped back. Olvia faced them all with a warm smile. Remember, this isn't goodbye. It's just, see you later, she promised. We'll be counting the days, Robin promised fervently. So will the rest of us, Brooke swore. Take care, Mom. I'll be sure to bring Dad for the next time you show up, Usopp promised. The two groups exchanged smiles and waves. And then, at last, the morning light faded, and the formerly deceased loved ones of the Straw Hats with it. For a moment, nobody moved. Then all of them once again became acutely aware of how hungry they were. Hey, cook. How about a banquet fit for a king to celebrate the best thing that's happened to us since Luffy took the throne? Zoro suggested with a grin. Sanji puffed a bit of smoke out of his cigarette, matching his rival's grin tooth for tooth. A momentous day indeed when I have no choice but to say, excellent idea, Mosshead. Last one to the ship does the dishes, Usopp's voice echoed, his afterimage fading. Hey, no fair. Luffy and Chopper called as they pursued him. One by one, the crew all vanished, racing back to their ship. Just another day in the Grand Blue Ocean. Just another impossible wish come true.